PowerPoint? My slides are good. Okay, awesome. So we are the Restorative Justice in SLO County workshop. If you were hoping that this was the panel or the workshop that you were joining, welcome. If not, I completely understand if you need to step out and go elsewhere. Today, we're going to be doing a few different things. We only have an hour together, and so I want to maximize our time. I will be doing a brief introduction to Restorative Partners, just kind of letting you know who we are and what we do in the community. And then I will also be doing an overview of restorative practices and restorative justice as different frameworks for doing the work that we do. Maybe a little like caveat, this will be a very cursory overview. And I will point you towards some additional resources that you can use to continue your learning at the end of the session. Because the big piece of our workshop today is our panelist circle. So I have three amazing folks with me today, Carolina, Arthur, and Luis, who are going to be sharing a little bit about their journey, about their experience with restorative partners and restorative justice. And then we will be moving into a Q&A where you will have the opportunity to ask questions of our panelists, and we'll kind of open it up for discussion. So the first part of our session is going to be maybe a little more formal or technical. And then during our panelist circle and the Q&A, we hope that it will be a lot more discussion based. So I will just jump right in. I want to maximize, like I said, maximize our time. So Restorative Partners is a nonprofit organization here in SLO County. Our mission is to transform lives impacted by crime through healing services and relationships. So we have a restorative justice approach to our work that focuses on mind, body, and spiritual transformation, trauma-informed care, responsibility, accountability, and accompaniment for folks who are returning from incarceration. Our goal is to reduce recidivism and provide a continuum of care from incarceration through reentry and reincorporation into the community. We've been doing our work for just over 10 years. We work out at the county jail and juvenile hall. We work with folks in reentry who are returning from state prison. And we work with anybody who's justice involved. We also have new partnerships at the courts and the DA's office that I will be speaking about in just a little bit. A little bit about our vision, our commitment. I will just read this. This is our commitment statement. We believe that every person believes to be treated with dignity and respect. We strive to provide intentional, inclusive, and trauma-informed services and programs. We acknowledge that Restorative Partners is situated on the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Yaktichu, Tichu, Yaktohimi Northern Chumash tribe. We honor the tribe's connection to these territories and respect the land on which we live and work. We will continue to center the voices of the most vulnerable and most marginalized members of our community, and we will continue to stand up and speak out against systems of oppression. So this is very cursory, very introductory overview of Restorative Partners. I will get into, or we'll talk a little bit more about some of the nuts and bolts of all of this as we move forward. But before I turn things over to my panelists, I thought it would be helpful to just do a quick overview or introduction to some terms that you may hear today. And I want to start by differentiating restorative practices and restorative justice. So the International Institute for Restorative Practices, which is kind of a governing body for restorative practices, says that this is an emerging social science that studies how to strengthen relationships between individuals, as well as social connections within communities. So while it may be new to what we in the Western world may call social sciences, restorative practices has deep roots within Indigenous communities throughout the world. So I'd like to acknowledge the Indigenous roots of the work that we are talking about today. So restorative practices, I like to think of as the umbrella. It's the big picture, it's how we engage and interact with one another. Restorative justice is a way of looking at criminal justice that focuses on repairing harm done to people and relationships rather than punishing offenders. So it doesn't mean that offenders should not be held accountable or that harm should not be addressed. It simply means that the needs of those who were harmed should be centered in the conversation. So again, restorative practices is the big picture, it's how we engage. Restorative justice is how we respond when harm has been done. So to help break this out a little bit further, we like to kind of run through this differentiation. When harm has been done, most folks are familiar with the criminal justice system, It tends to ask 3 questions in the immediate aftermath of harm. What law has been broken, who did it, and what do they deserve? This is a pretty standard response that we see when a law has been broken or when like I said, harm has been done to people or relationships. Restorative justice turns this a little bit and asks who was harmed, and that could be anybody. It opens up the process to anybody who might have experienced harm. What are their needs, and whose obligation is it to meet these needs? So again, the focus is centering the needs of those who have been harmed and coming up with action steps for how we move forward. So talking about these things in action, there are a couple of different ways that restorative practices and restorative justice can be utilized, and different ways that we utilize these at Restorative Partners. Proactive circles are a really great way to establish norms, build community, connect, collaborate, check in. Normally, so last year when I came to CSQ, I held a circle. We got together, we played some games, we built community. That's a proactive circle. They should be held on a relatively consistent basis. So yearly is maybe not consistent enough for this, but you get the idea. And when you're able to hold proactive circles on a consistent basis and get folks together and build those norms, establish those norms, you're really able to help create a safe space for clients and for facilitators alike. So at Restorative Partners, we use proactive circles throughout our programs with our staff. We have a weekly staff circle. In our homes, we have weekly house meetings. Our treatment groups are run on a circle platform. Our education groups are run in circles. We like circles because they really establish that sense of safety and community. There isn't a hierarchy. Everybody is part of the circle. Responsive circles are another type of restorative practice that can be used to respond to an incident, an altercation, an instance of harm. Responsive circles require more practice and facilitators could really benefit from some specialized training. However, if proactive circles have built community, responsive circles are a safe way to then process, like it says at the bottom, process change, relapses, instances of harm, etc. So these are 2 restorative practices that have to do with community connection. Again, if we go back to the definition of restorative practices, it's about thinking about how we're connected and how our relationships are interdependent. So proactive circles build those norms, establish community. Responsive circles allow us to respond in a way that is safe and that builds on the work that has been done in proactive circles. Restorative justice, so again, the response to harm, utilizes a few different frameworks, and I've just chosen to highlight one today, and this is the restorative conference. A conference is a structured, facilitated meeting between folks who caused harm, folks who were harmed, and others who may have been impacted by the situation. A trained facilitator like myself would lead a process to discuss the incident, any harm that was done, the needs of the folks involved. Again, those 3 questions that we ask in a restorative process. And our goals are to move towards accountability, healing, and restoration with input from everybody involved. These can be used in lieu of traditional disciplinary or justice processes or as a supplement to those processes. Currently, we use conferencing to respond to instances of harm within our programs in order to find solutions that do not necessarily require someone to be removed from a program or returned to custody. We want to, again, address the harm, address the needs, and find a way to move forward that is best for everybody involved. So we do this in our homes when there has been relapse or instances of harm. We do this within our staff. We do this within programming. And it's a really effective way to address the incident and repair the relationship. We're also offering restorative conferencing as a restorative alternative to charges or incarceration in a few programs within the community. We work with the DA's office in their pre-file misdemeanor diversion program. So in this program, if all parties agree, the DA can recommend diversion before charges are filed. And if someone meets the expectations and walks through the process, they have the possibility to find some resolution and some restoration without ever having those charges filed. In January of 2021, AB 3234 became PC 1001.95. It's a lot of lingo to say it's a misdemeanor diversion program that empowers judges in a superior court to divert cases that meet certain criteria. So at the judge's discretion, as it says on the slide, and over the objection of a prosecuting attorney, they can offer diversion to a defendant pursuant to the provisions in the penal code. At this time, certain misdemeanor charges are not eligible for diversion, including domestic violence, stalking, and offenses that would require someone to register as a sex offender under PC 290. But it leaves the rest of misdemeanor charges up to the discretion of the judges. So Restorative Partners is able to offer restorative conferencing in cases where it is appropriate. And again, if someone meets all of the expectations, the charges can be expunged from their record. So these are, like I said, we have a lot of things going on. These are just the things I chose to highlight today. Just to give a sense of what these things can look like in action. We have the maybe less formal community building processes like circles and the ways that we choose to interact with one another, to the more formal process like a conference that is facilitated and allows us to have some resolution and some action steps. So I just want to pause here and see if there are any questions from the group. Again, I know this was cursory and very introductory, but I do want to make sure we have time for our panelists. So I just want to see if anyone has questions. I'll stop sharing my screen and we can pop back out. We have a small enough group. If anyone wants to come off mute and ask questions, you can also utilize the chat box.
I was just wondering, I wanted to make sure, so restorative justice focuses on kind of helping those who committed crimes as well as helping those who were affected by the crimes?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can just speak from experience. A restorative process, by opening up the question to needs instead of punishment necessarily, it allows for a variety of situations, and it allows for folks who have caused harm to also express needs. They may be acting out of a need that they have, or an unhealed trauma or something like that. We've all been there. The most relatable thing for me is when I'm hangry and I do or say something that I regret. And I don't mean to be so reductive, but that's an example of this. When we are responding to needs, sometimes we need to address that need before we can address anything else. And so restorative justice allows us to kind of tease that out and allow for a multitude of responses. Oh, I see a question. That was a great question. Thank you, Caitlin. I see a question in the chat. How enthusiastic or supportive have judges and attorneys been with engaging 1001.95? Really good question. Locally, we have a group of judges and attorneys, both private and public and prosecution, who have come together to roll out PC 1001.95, also known as kind of the post-file misdemeanor diversion. And we've been met with resounding support. I think that the judges see a need for this. It's also a law, so they have an obligation. And some of the attorneys likewise have jumped on the bandwagon with providing alternatives. I think that when it comes to misdemeanor charges, our courts are often inundated, and this provides a pathway to divert different programs, to different programs that may have more positive outcomes and takes some of the pressure off. So I have seen this be met with support. In terms of implementing restorative conferencing, I think there's a little bit of hesitation. Often diversion programs divert to drug and alcohol services or to probation or other entities where there's maybe more traditional accountability with participating in a class or participating in a restitution program. Restorative conferencing is a little different. The idea of getting people together and having a sit down can feel maybe a little too emotional or touchy-feely for folks who buy into the law and order model. But I still think we're getting there and we're making progress, and that's really promising. Someone messaged too, how are the requirements that need to be met for cases to be considered for diversion decided? At this time, diversion is determined by the judges for PC 1001.95. it's decided by the DA for their diversion program. We can provide information and consultation, but at this time it is determined by charges and by the willingness of participants to come together and agree to the terms of diversion. It's really new, and I'm hoping that at this time next year I'll have more to report out about this. But at this time, it is up to those entities. All right, so we're gonna, as we move into the Q&A, we'll have a little more time too, but I just wanted to make sure I was checking in about how we feel about these concepts. So I would like at this time to turn the microphone over to my colleague, Luis, who's going to introduce himself and share a little bit about his story. Each of our panelists is going to have a little time to share. While they're sharing, I encourage you to be thinking about questions you might have or things you'd like to know more about. To keep things simple, I've created a Google form rather than using the chat box. I think the Google form will be a helpful way to gather questions, and then I will be moderating the Q&A session after this. So while Luis is speaking, and then Carolina, and then Art, I will have the link in the chat box. Please feel free to click the link and submit your questions. If we don't get to your question during the Q&A, again, I'm not sure how much is out there, how much we're going to be rumbling with. If we don't get to your question, we will be doing some follow-up on our social media as well. So you could follow up with us and get answers to those questions. So I'm going to put the link in the chat and turn things over to Luis.
Hi, looks like I get to go first. Okay, as she mentioned, my name is Luis, and my experience with restorative justice and restorative partners. So first, a little background. I was making very horrible and terrible decisions when I was young. At 15 years old, I used to be a gang member at 15 years old, and was committing crimes for that gang, crimes which I regret. And I was arrested at 15, tried as an adult, sentenced to life in prison, and then was transferred to an adult prison at 17 years old. For me, growing up, I spent about 18 and a half, 19 years almost incarcerated. So I was released when I was 34, a little over a year and a half now. And for me, growing up in prison, there was a lot that that I got accustomed to in prison. Mainly the part of restorative justice and restorative practices for me is about relationships, about the relationships of the community, about building things together, about committing, trusting, and working towards healing for that, working towards healing together. And those are the things that I didn't learn in prison. And especially at that age, like my mindset was more isolation, more like there was points where it got to be very dark in that sense. So by the time I started working on myself and maturing inside a prison, I was in my mid to late 20s when I started really realizing that I needed to work on myself in those aspects, in the relationship aspects, and just being able to empathize and things that I had shut out early on in my prison stay. And when I was finally granted release, I was really trying to start partners while I was incarcerated towards the end. And I applied and was accepted to come to the program. Coming out here with restorative partners,
It looks like we lost you, Luis. Can you still hear me? but do you think we should give it a second and see if he comes back up?
Yeah, we could give it a second. Also, Luis, if you can hear us, it might help if you turn off your video, just so there's less bandwidth on the Wi-Fi. Seems like he could hear us.
Oh, it looks like we lost him. He may have been dropped.
Okay.
It's all right. The joys of Zoom.
Oh, he's back.
Oh, good. There you are.
I think you're on mute, Luis.
There we are.
Perfect.
All right. I'm sorry about that. I'm not sure where I lost everyone.
I think you were on the restorative partners part.
Okay. Being able to come out here, like there was a lot of stressors in life, whether it was like being able to get my ID, which I'd never had, driver's license, social security card, getting my first ever job, and having the support and encouragement was huge for me. The tangible things were there, whether it was being able to live somewhere rent-free for the first 6 months. But for me, it was more than that. It was being able to go where people were encouraging, smiling at the office, being able to explore the world out here with the support of people, and being able to learn how to be a community member, which I wasn't when I was out. So for me, that was like that's what I had wanted the last few years of my incarceration, and being able to come out here with Restorative Partners was huge for me, because there was other options that I could have gone, and those options were more so like, you're in a transitional home. This is after your stay in prison, just go through this home where it's more of an impersonal feel, because I know a lot of guys that have gone through that. So for me, being able to come out here where you're able to intimately get to know and really build a relationship with myself out here was huge. So now I went through Restore Partners after 6 months. I transitioned to living on my own, working. So I work full time now. I have 2 cars, very used cars, but 2 cars. But just being able to pay my taxes, being able to do all of that, I'm thankful. I'm thankful to be able to walk out every day and be able to see the sun and enjoy the sun, knowing that I can go out and grab a pizza if I want. And for me, it starts with the relationships and what restorative justice and restorative practices is all about. If there's any questions later on, feel free to ask them, and I will answer them. But I know we have short time, so I'll leave that there.
Thank you so much, Luis. I can just say I'm so impressed by you, and I'm so honored to work with you, and I'm so grateful that you're here today. Please keep questions coming in. I've gotten a few coming in the Google form. The link is in the chat. Please feel free to pop your questions in. I want to pass things to Carolina. We'll just kind of keep the panel circle going. So Carolina, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Hey, everybody. My name's Carolina, she, her pronouns. So yeah, I had kind of a rough start when it comes to life. Through the foster system, adopted into abusive homes, back in the foster system. I moved out of my foster home, and a couple months later, didn't take long to become homeless and start using drugs. I got in trouble a few times, obviously, as comes with being a homeless drug addict. And one of my daughters was taken by the state. And I just couldn't get out of it, like drugs are really hard to get out of. And I don't know, I just felt totally helpless. And I ended up getting clean for my second daughter, though she was taken by the state too. Didn't get clean early on, and ended up coming to restorative partners with about 7 months clean. Still, I had because of my upbringing, I had no kind of life skills, didn't know how to pay bills, didn't know how to cook, didn't know how to take care of myself even, let alone now I have my child with me. And it was really great, just the community of like I was in Restorative Partners Anna's home, which works with women and children, and just having the other moms around me, having now my coordinator around me, Julia, Sister T, just everyone at Restorative Partners, like knowing that they had my back, because that's all I've ever wanted, was to belong. And learning these life skills through the time. And I was here for about 9 or 10 months and still didn't feel like I was ready to be on my own when my boss pitched the idea that I should work for Anna's home. And I told her no, because I still didn't drive. I still had no idea how to drive. I don't know. I just still didn't feel like I wasn't that comfortable. I was still very shy. I was still very timid. I didn't think I could help teach anybody anything or help run a house. And my sponsor and her kind of talked me into it. So I figured, okay, I'll try it for like a year, until you find somebody else. I've been working here for over 2 years now. So I've been here for over 3. And I feel like helping these women find themselves, and like I have been able to teach them because I can cook. I know the DMV, I know CWS, I know all of these systems that I had to go through, and I can teach them through personal experience. And like I run the house through restorative justice is a big thing about like empathy. Like you have to have empathy for doing the restorative justice system and stuff, and like feel where everybody's coming from. And so that's kind of how I run the house. As you said, we do have like our house meeting once a week. We have kind of like a mini conference where like usually it comes up to parenting difficulties between the kids and stuff like that. And so we'll sit down and like, what are your feelings on it? What are your feelings on it? Okay, what can we do to compromise, And it's really great. I watch Restorative Partners work with all these people that just have great lives now and stuff, because they were able to build those relationships and have that support system. And I have it too still. And it's just really means the world to me, because without that support system, I wouldn't have thrived as much as I have. I wouldn't have found myself as much without having kind of the push to do this and everything, and feeling like I belong. Like I fully feel like I belong here, and I fully feel like I belong with Restorative Partners, and I'm very pleased to work with them. As Louise said, if you have questions, feel free to drop them. Glad I didn't cut out, because I've been in and out of the chat this whole time. But yeah, restorative justice is amazing. Like when I got in trouble those few times, it felt like everything was against me. And feeling like everything's against you when you have no life skills, or you're not sure where to go and don't have the support system, just makes you feel like the world is against you. So coming somewhere where they really work with you and they want to see you succeed is amazing. Back to you, Vivien.
Thank you so much, Carolina. I again really appreciate your vulnerability and your sharing. Let's just kind of keep this rolling, and I will pass it to our last panelist, Arthur. The floor is yours, and please keep the questions coming. I'm seeing some good ones in the form.
Hi, Vivien. Hi, Carolina. Hi, Louise, and everyone else. My name is Arthur, and I have a little bit of a backstory. I, like Carolina, grew up in foster care without either of my biological parents in the picture. I, like Louise, had to go to prison and spend time in prison. Throughout my life, after being in foster care, I have been periodically homeless and have had to struggle throughout my life. I always wanted to work in social work, and so it's kind of ironic now. And I was led astray for a while, though. I actually was able to put myself through school and got a degree in business. Uh,
Lyric, I'm on a freaking conference call. Get in your room.
About that, Art, back to you.
yeah, back to me. That was a good little interlude, and but we were I was kind of led astray. I got a degree in finance, business administration, with a concentration in finance, and but again, I found myself struggling with mental illness and homelessness, not having that support group, and I ended up going to prison, and I believe it was because of a punitive system and a heavy-handed system that has an attitude towards different people of socioeconomic status, and their relations with those people aren't aren't the aren't the best, and they could be repaired. And now, just to fast forward, I'm a assistant house manager with Restorative Partners. Thanks to the guidance of Cami, my counselor, and Jimmy, the manager here at Restorative Partners House in Los Osos. And just my thoughts on restorative justice uh, is really just helping with that attitudinal indifference that the punitive system has towards different segments of society, and 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 I think restorative justice helps with help understand that there's a cause and effect relationship with people, and if if we go around in circles with harm instead of with restoration, then it just causes more harm. Uh, so that's the punitive versus restorative shift that I'm hoping to see more people participate in, is that shift towards more restorative justice and less punitive justice. And as far as restorative partners, they really helped me with a soft landing from prison. And there's a lot of needs that need to be met when you're coming out of prison, pretty much stripped down from everything and completely isolated from society for long periods of time. There's a lot of warm handoffs. There's a lot of, like Luis said, tangible things that help you get on your feet and actually become a working member of society. And when I left prison, I had 4 days before I left prison, and they made me sign papers saying that I was going to be released homeless. And 4 days before I was released, I actually got a call from my parole planner, and they said that they had an opportunity with Restorative Partners, and I gladly accepted. Uh, uh, after prison, I had a lot of ambitions to start a master's degree, and but there's certain circumstances where I couldn't just take the leap right out of prison and have the opportunity and the funding to do so. But by participating in this restorative circles and being present and open to opportunities, um, opportunities began to present themselves to me. And now I'm in a more fulfilling place of being able to contribute with the social work that's required in the housing program. Uh, right now, I'm working with an ally and a mentor as well. I'm working with Mary Cronin with Restorative Partners. That's part of the mentoring program and allying program. with the Restorative Partners, and she's linked me to Don Maruska, the author of Take Charge of Your Talent. And he's been really influential in like coaching me to be more successful. And as part of coaching me to be more successful, he's teaching me and Mary and my experience. They're teaching me to be able to rewrite my story, a story of systematic victimization to one of success. And they've helped me with socialization despite stigma caused by attitudinal indifference. And they've also helped me to build relationships with the community and make effective requests and be able to communicate well and also advance my purpose in life. And again, I've been able to come full circle. And since that little kid growing up in a foster home that wanted to work in social work and kind of had the experiences necessary to build that ability to work in social work, I've come full circle. So thank you so much. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Art. And thank you to Carolina and Luis as well. I have a few questions that have come through. Thank you for folks who've been submitting. There are a few themes. And I actually wanted to start with a question that came for Luis, but I'm interested in hearing from all of you as well about how you got connected to RP. So Luis, the question says, how did you connect with Restorative Partners as you were transitioning out of the prison system? And I'd also like to open that up, and Carolina and Art, if you'd like to share as well about how you got connected to RP, that would be great.
Yeah, you want me to go first? Yeah. So I was a part of, by the end of my incarceration, I was a part of many self-help groups, and Monique Salas, who used to work with Restorative Partners, actually went in to the institution and talked about Restorative Partners. And for me, I'm not originally from this county, but I mean, what's not to love about this county? There's sunshine, beaches. So I mean, I immediately, when she started talking about Restorative Partners and what they offered, I started writing letters and writing letters, and then I wrote some more letters, and then I was accepted. So that's how I initially got introduced to Restorative Partners. And once I was released, I think the second day I was allowed to spend the day with my family, and then the second day I was inside the home.
Thanks, Luis. Carolina, would you like to share about your journey to RP? I know you touched on it a little bit, but yeah, how did you get involved with Restorative Partners in the first place?
After having my daughter, having her taken, I was at the shelter because I didn't have anywhere else to go. And they were slowly giving me like overnights, but having overnights with your baby at a shelter is just not the forte. So I was looking for somewhere else to go. And my parent teaching person talked about Anna's home. And so I got in touch with Julia. And it's funny because I called Anna's home and Brian's house, which is another organization. But Julia was the first one to pick up and be like, ask me about my story, ask me how long I'd been clean, ask me how I got clean. And she's all, you sound like you're really driven, and so we would love to have you in this house. And Brian's house called beforehand and was more residential, which I felt like I needed a little more help. And I didn't know that it's actually a stepping stone to go from Brian's house to Anna's home. I didn't know that there was a connection there. So I moved in and was like, I got to meet Julia for the first time. And she said she'd been following me throughout my journey since I had talked to her and stuff. And so I just immediately felt like, cool, someone's been with me through this.
Awesome. Thank you, Carolina. And Art, how about you? How did you get connected to Restorative Partners?
Well, my thoughts on connecting with restorative partners starts with my parole planner, and like I said, 4 days before I signed paperwork saying that I was going to parole homeless, and then I got a call from the parole planner, and they placed me with restorative partners. It's funny that uh, the the situation is that when I was released from prison, I had a lot of trouble getting to um, restorative partners, and I found myself like actually right out of the gate on a train to downtown LA in Skid Row, thinking maybe I'll go back to being homeless, and I had this opportunity, and this really was a great opportunity because all of a sudden I had a choice. You know, instead of the age-old catch-22, if you're homeless, you're stuck there because you have either no home for a job or no job to get a home. All of a sudden, I had a choice. I had a home available to me to be able to spring from and to grow from. And without that opportunity, I would be stuck in that catch-22. So, thank you.
Thank you, Art. Our next question, again, came up while you were speaking, Luis, but I did want to open it up to all of our panelists or whoever would like to share. The question says, just wanted to ask what prompted you to want to change to be more empathetic? Was there an experience or was it a period of time where you realized you just needed a change? So maybe what was the catalyst for you? And this, I've seen this in a couple other questions too. And again, anyone can share. I don't know if anyone feels more strongly about responding. But yeah, what was it that kind of inspired you or encouraged you to make a change?
Yeah, that's a very tough question to narrow down. It'll be a long answer, but because there was many factors. But part of it I can answer like, in my mind at 15, I never like wanted to be unempathetic, if that's the way to put it. Like in my mind, I wasn't like I'm gonna be unempathetic, or what I was in my mind is like I'm this way, like I'm in the gang, this is what I'm doing. And so growing up in prison though, I slowly realized like I was becoming more and more unempathetic or callous, if you want to call it that, in regards to like just not really caring like about people in per se. Um, and I didn't like that. Like I didn't like the feeling that it brought within me, the tension that it brought within me as a person, being in a maximum security prison surrounded by all of this energy. And although I would find myself contributing to that and taking it on myself, and it took me time to like realize like I can actually do something about it. Whereas in my mind early on, I'm like, this is how I'm going to survive. This is how it is. And really, it took me a while to figure that out, that that's not the case. But I still didn't do anything to change that until my mid to late 20s. And there was a catalyst that did happen, because like I said, I envisioned myself as a good person, if you want to call it that. But I was still doing bad things inside prison. Um, but I wanted to be a good person. And then, so my mom passed away in 2013. And for me, it was very shocking to me, because she was relatively young. Um, and I started really like realizing like what her view for me had been, and how I hadn't given that kind of gratitude feeling or love towards other people. And it really started to hit me like what she's wanted for me all along was the partnership, the love, and being a good person in that regard. And um it really like made me think where I was at, how I was treating people, and how horrible I had treated people, because they um, they felt those things, and I never really paid attention to it. So for me, it was that moment in that general time frame where I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try to do better today than I did yesterday, and I'm gonna continue to try to do better. Empathetic wise, I didn't use that word in my head, but it was a feeling of like I'm caring for how people are doing, what they're doing, how they can contribute positively, how they can be positive about themselves. And for me, it just grew a little bit at a time, to the point where towards the end, I was like very much willing to be that person that I wanted to be, regardless of what the prison consequences or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it took a while, and of course, there's a lot more details in that time frame. But again, I know we have short time, so I'm gonna stop there. But yeah, there was a catalyst, but there was many things also, that happened along the way, to help me grow towards being more empathetic.
Thank you, Luis. Art or Carolina, would either of you like to follow up about your own journey, your own transformational change, shift, whatever you'd like to call it?
I can go. I was a nice kid, a teenager, all that. I thought I was very empathetic. I did care about people, but I was never really empathetic towards drug addicts, inmate, all that stuff. I felt like I had this hard spot in my head. And as I started going down my downward spiral, I grew a little bit more empathetic, because knowing that like who I thought I was, and I could still go down this road, like it's not necessarily a choice to go down these roads. Being addicted is not a choice, stuff like that. And then it really made me feel like losing my daughter, things I thought I would never do. And so it's really humbled me to the fact that everybody has their own path, and that we can all come back from that. And so if I can be a part, I started, especially when I got to the homes, when I started like communal living, watching what everybody's going through and knowing that I've been there. It's really helped build my empathy for the fact that like, if I can be there for them, or if I can look through their perspective, that it'll help and can lift them up a bit.
I just want to address Tori's comment in the chat about assumptions about empathy. I absolutely agree with you, Tori, and I can maybe clarify my own language a little bit around this, and just say, looking at, I'm hoping to frame this in terms of relationship and transformation, and thinking about how we can come to restoration. So I apologize if I came across as seeming like I was blatantly, generalizing folks who are incarcerated or returned. That was not my intention at all. And so trying to broaden this conversation into just what was that kind of journey like, and how did transformation get catalyzed, or how are we moving towards restoration? So I appreciate your comment. I just want to acknowledge and validate that as well. And also take that accountability. I'm sorry if I was a little hasty in my posing of that question. So Art, I'll turn it over to you if you'd like to share a little bit about your own journey.
Yeah, a little bit about my journey, and like the catalyst that has really given me a helping hand is that it's really, to me, about hope. When I was homeless and mentally ill, and all the doors closing in on you, and everything kind of getting worse in that downward spiral, and when you hit bottom, there's a lack of hope. And but when you have an opportunity, and there's someone saying, okay, well, we can help if you're willing to at least have that hope for yourself, and that hope that the doors may start to open again. And we're here, just having that ability to realize that there's some light at the end of the tunnel, and there's someone waiting there to give you a helping hand, is what provides or what provided that hope for me.
Thanks, Art. We have probably about time for one more question. So I would just like to synthesize a few different things I'm seeing come through. Some folks are asking about how restorative justice or this restorative framework has changed the way you approach interactions with other people. And I think this is kind of a continuation of the theme of our last question, just about thinking about the way that we interact, or we build relationship, or we restore relationship when we have caused harm. So I'll open it up again to whoever from our panel would like to share, but maybe a general question to just how has this restorative approach changed or evolved, or been in line with the way that you think about interacting with folks, and how has it maybe transformed or moved you in a direction of being restorative? I can start, and then I'll kind of share as well. I can just share from my own experience. This restorative framework has changed the way I see myself and see my interaction with folks. It has changed the way that I deal with situations of stress or conflict in my own life. I think it has allowed me to see myself as part of something instead of removed from, or needing to make up time or space or anything like that. And so I think that being able to connect with folks and see myself as part of something has been really transformative in my own life as a practitioner and just as a member of the community. So I'll pass it back to our panel. I know Luis has to go. He's going back to work. So thank you for being with us today, Luis. And Art and Carolina, if you have any final thoughts just about how a restorative approach has been impactful for you, I'll open it up to you.
I feel that the restorative approach has, like you said, changed the way I view even conversations, just different outputs of what people do. It's helped me be a little more humble instead of like accusatory, like say the criminal justice or people, how they responded to me back when I was in that phase. It helps me see both sides. Like we said, we say who is hurt and stuff like that, and we listen to everybody in the thing. It helps me be less judgmental when it comes to whether it's something in my life or even for myself, be a little less judgmental towards myself, and towards the other women in the house or just people I meet out in society and stuff, listening to everybody and all their inputs and everything, and listening with a fair ear rather than a judgmental one. And it helps all the relationships in my life. Anyone can come to me and know that I'm going to be fair, know that I'm going to listen, and it's really helped me build that support system.
I don't know if you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Well, how the question was, how has it changed?
Just how has a restorative way of thinking about things impacted your work, your relationships, your ability to respond to harm or conflict? I know it's a general question, but just how has the restorative framework impacted the way you interact with other folks?
Yeah, the restorative framework has helped me with like the benefit of the doubt. When you have two sides that are clashing and you have two people that either have harmed each other or two groups that have harmed each other in multiple ways, and two groups that are fearful of one another, it always comes down to who's going to give the other side the benefit of the doubt, and then who's going to give the other side a chance. And then usually it takes one. When one side does, then the other side will. So I think when it comes to conflict, and when it comes to like when we're talking about punitive versus restorative, the restorative side will help with that benefit of the doubt. And reach out with the helping hand instead of just not allow therefore a chance to grow together instead of close the doors on the relationship.
Thanks, Art. I just, with our last few minutes, want to take a moment. I know we had to say goodbye to Luis a little early, and I always wish we had more time in these spaces, but I want to take a moment and thank you, Art and Carolina, for your participation, your vulnerability, your willingness to share with us. And then I want to also thank our participants today. Thank you for your thoughtful questions, for engaging with this conversation. As I said, I always wish it could be longer, and I wish we could have more in-depth conversation, but I hope this has inspired you to start thinking about ways that, restorative practices and restorative justice your life is impacted by those things, in ways that you could get involved. I want to end with like one quick little slide. I know I promised some resources because this was so quick. These are some wonderful resources that we like to direct folks to. If you want to learn more, or you're inspired to do some more reading, this list, as it says, barely scratches the surface, but I think it does provide at least some general context. So Mariam Kaba just released an amazing book, We Do This Till We Free Us, about prison abolition and transformative justice. It came out, I believe, on Monday this week, so it's very new. Our Prisons Obsolete by Angela Davis. I can also put this list in the chat, or feel free to take a screenshot if that helps. We Keep Us Safe by Zach Norris. He runs the Ella Baker Center up in the Bay Area. Beyond Survival, it's a series of essays edited by Edgeris Dixon and Leah Lakshmi Pipsna Samarasana. We Will Not Cancel Us by Adrienne Marie Brown. Until We Reckon by Danielle Sered. Transformharm.org is a really great website that has synthesized a lot of this work. The Barnard Center for Research on Women's YouTube channel has had an amazing series of videos lately about accountability, restorative justice, transformative justice. And final plug, because I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't plug it, we have our virtual community workshop coming up in April. It's 9 hours of training that goes a lot more in depth into a lot of this and talks about what we're doing. If you're curious or you want more information, I will put my email in the chat box. Please feel free to reach out. I would love to talk with you more. Also, if you just have questions or you want follow-up about what we talked about today, I'm happy to answer. As I said, I know we weren't going to be able to get to all of our questions. We missed a few. And if you want to reach out specifically offline, there were a few questions we didn't get to about logistics with restorative partners. Please feel free to email. We will also be doing some follow-up on our social media at Restorative Partners on Instagram and Facebook. So look for our follow-up on there as well. But yeah, again, one last big thank you to you all for participating, and such a huge thank you to our panelists for being willing to come in here and share about their lives and their experience with us. I just want to thank you all. And Ava, I'll turn it back to you. Squeaked in under the 1 o'clock.
Yeah, perfect. I see a lot of thank yous in the chat, and I just want to reiterate, thank you so much for coming and being part of the conference, and to the panelists. I definitely learned a lot, and I know that everyone else really did too. And I will be following up with all those resources you sent. And also in the chat for participants, I linked a feedback and giveaway form. You could just click on that and fill it out, and then you'll be entered into our giveaway, and we could learn more ways to better this conference for next year. And yeah, just to reiterate, thank you so much to the panelists and for the session, and thank you to everyone for coming. If you have any questions about schedule or anything, I'll stick around in this room. And I'm sure that maybe Vivien could stay a bit longer too if there's any specific questions for her. And yeah, thank you so much.
I just wanted to ask a question I asked on the Google form that we didn't get to. How did the organization get started? I think I also asked, like, what kinds of obstacles did you face along the way in expanding? And,
oh goodness, the obstacles. What obstacles didn't we face?
oh, I bet there were many.
That's a really good question though. So we got our start in 2011-ish. It was kind of we didn't formally become a nonprofit until 2015, but we started in 2011. We had some in-reach at the county jail. We were doing, we had an AmeriCorps volunteer and an executive director, and that was our entire operation. And our amazing AmeriCorps volunteer really built a cohort of folks, and it was all volunteer run, who were doing things like yoga and meditation and art. We had a men's honor farm garden program. We helped with the sewing program at the women's jail. So it was really kind of like pro-social activities and interaction, and then just kind of built from there. We added our reentry mentorship program in 2013. We added housing. So we have a whole range of homes, and Art and Carolina are both involved with our housing programs today. And Luis, as he mentioned, went through our home for men on parole. So it kind of grew just based on the need. We were working with folks, and then we realized there was a need for support in reentry. So we kind of went there and we did some work, and now we have housing. And so now we're realizing that there's a need to go all the way back to the beginning in the judicial process. So now we're kind of getting involved there. So we kind of go where we identify a need and also a gap that we can fill. So it's been a little nebulous, roadblocks at every turn. I'm sure you can imagine walking into the DA's office and saying, "Hi, I think instead of prosecuting people, you should let them come to my program." We get lots of pushback, but we have also been met with some overwhelming support from certain folks, and that's been really promising too.
Thank you. Thank you. That's
Absolutely.
Really
Absolutely.
Any other questions from participants? Okay, great. Thanks again for coming. And thank you, Vivien. This was really so good. And Arthur, I know you're still left. I really enjoyed this a lot. So thank you.
I'm so glad. Thanks for having us, Ava. Art, again, thank you for stepping up. You did an amazing job.
Thanks everybody for having me.
Yeah. Have a good day, everyone. And feel free to go to other sessions and learn some more about other topics.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.